Abuse comes in more shapes than shadows. It slips under doors, hides in laughter, curls itself around your childhood like smoke you can't outrun. And people ask, how do you measure it? Who suffered more? Who deserves sympathy? Who gets to be the face of pain? The truth is brutal and simple. No matter how deep your wounds go, there are millions of others carved by the same darkness, and millions who had it even worse. There's no scoreboard, just survivors carrying different versions of the same storm. Mine wasn't one event. It wasn't a moment in time. It was a lifestyle, woven into the walls, stitched into the days, something I breathed without knowing I was choking. It came for me young, and decades later it still shows up everywhere. In the way I flinch at sudden footsteps, in the way I scan a room before I sit down, in the way I hold my breath without realizing it. It haunts the edges of every choice I make. But here's the part people never expect. I'm silly, genuinely silly. I laugh too loud at bad jokes. I care too much about people who don't care back. I try to fix things no one asked me to fix. I feel everything, maybe too much. That's the curse of real abuse. It doesn't always make you cold. Sometimes it makes you blisteringly empathetic. It makes you recognize pain in others before they even open their mouths. It makes you want to protect every wounded soul you meet, even when you can't protect yourself. I've always been tiny, 5 feet tall on a good day when I'm standing on hope. Not fragile, though. Never fragile. There's muscle under my skin, built from years of deciding that if the world was going to try me, I'd damn well be ready. I wanted to be strong enough that anyone thinking of hurting me would realize I was not worth the risk. But anger, that was my first language. Short fuse, long history. I grew up throwing hands like it was instinct, like it was survival. And for a long time it was. Back then, if someone crossed a line, they caught a two-piece without a warning label. Eventually, that wasn't enough. Rage without direction burns everything, including you. So I turned it into something sharp, something disciplined. I became obsessed with learning to fight for real, the kind you train for, the kind that demands respect from your body and your mind. Every punch, every drill, every bruise taught me control, taught me how to choose my battles instead of drowning in all of them. Learning to be physically dominant taught me something people never expect: restraint. When you know exactly how much damage you could do, you stop needing to prove anything. I'm not some unhinged psycho. I don't want to see anyone hurt unless they're actively hurting me or someone I love. And even then, when I do have to confront someone, I stop the second I gain the upper hand. Because power isn't how far you go, it's how far you choose not to. That's the thing that crawls under my skin about Grifty. She walks around calling herself an abuse victim, but everything about her rings hollow. She isn't a survivor. She's a manipulator wearing a victim costume, stitched together from lies she repeats until she forgets their lies. She has no remorse. Not for the planning, not for the cruelty, not for the choices she made that shattered lives. She never felt bad then, and she doesn't feel bad now. And yet she acts like she deserves sympathy carved into stone. Grifty thinks the world owes her something, like every narcissistic abuser I've ever met. She thinks pain earns her a throne. She thinks victimhood is a crown she can snatch and wear whenever it benefits her. But the truth is, even if she had suffered, which she didn't, the world would still owe her nothing. Real victims, real survivors, they aren't out here making a spectacle of their scars. They're trying to breathe when nothing's suffocating them. They're trying to trust when nothing is threatening them. They're trying to live with wounds that still bleed even when no one sees them. They don't strut. They don't boast. They don't rewrite themselves as saints and martyrs while stepping on everyone still trapped in their own private hell. But Grifty, she does all of that. She floats through life like she's the second coming of something holy, expecting applause for tragedies she never lived. And that, right there, is why we hate her. Grifty is the embodiment of everything rotting at the core of humanity right now. She's not just a person, she's a symptom. A walking reminder that somewhere along the line, the world flipped itself upside down. That somehow, in the chaos of trending hashtags and short attention spans, good became suspicious, and evil became entertainment. When did that happen? When did murder turn into a stepping stone for celebrity status? When did taking a life become a shortcut to fame, interviews, sponsorships, and fan pages? When did we start mistaking infamy for importance? And worse, when did society become so numb that pedophilia, grooming, exploitation of the vulnerable got treated like unfortunate misunderstandings instead of the monstrous crimes they are? Have we always been this sick, this desensitized, this bored with morality? Or did the world just decay slowly around me while I was too busy surviving my own demons to notice? Sometimes I wonder if the world was always like this, if the cruelty was always there, just waiting for a face like Grifty's to expose it. A face charming enough, loud enough, narcissistic enough to drag all that ugliness into the light where everyone could see it and somehow clap for it. Because people do clap. They follow her. They idolize her. They defend her like she's some misunderstood saint instead of a walking disaster with blood on her hands and lies on her tongue. And every time I see that, it makes me question everything I thought I understood about right and wrong. Maybe the world didn't change. Maybe I did. Maybe abuse sharpened my eyes until I could see every predator wearing a halo, every fraud wrapped in sympathy, every manipulator bending the world around their narrative. Maybe people like Grifty have always existed. We just finally stopped hiding them. And that's the part that scares me the most. We may never know the real truth about Grifty. People like her twist reality until it bends around them. But I do know the truth about me. And it's this. I don't want my daughter's future children growing up in a world where I stayed silent, where I shrugged and looked away, where I didn't fight tooth and nail to make this place safer than the one I survived. Because silence is a choice. And it's a dangerous one. Public opinion matters. It always has. It's what gets laws written, changed, repealed. It's what gets good people elected and corrupt ones dragged out of office. Public opinion is the engine that moves everything forward or backward, depending on who's speaking the loudest. And if people like me, people like you, people who still believe in decency and accountability, if we don't participate, if we don't speak up, if we don't call out the darkness when we see it, then this world will twist itself into the worst version imaginable. Shaping the present and protecting the future isn't a side hobby. It's a full-time job, and every one of us is clocked in whether we like it or not. When something is unacceptable, we have a duty to name it loudly, clearly, relentlessly. Grifty should have never walked out of that prison. The people who were elected to protect us failed. They fumbled the responsibility they were trusted with, and now we're all living with the consequences. But that failure doesn't have to be permanent. We can choose better leaders. We can hold people accountable. We can push for laws that protect instead of excuse. We can demand better and be better. But it takes all of us. Because for every person trying to pull the world toward the light, there's someone else dragging it into the dark. And people like Grifty, the ones who are violent, manipulative, unfeeling, they're not rare, they're loud, they're bold, they're relentless. So we have to be louder, bolder, more relentless than them, because the future depends on who fights harder.